Welcome to the Executive Insights podcast brought to you by AWS. My name is Tom Soderstrom, and I'm an AWS Executive in Residence. And it's a true pleasure and a thrill for me to have Erin Kraemer here today. Erin is a Senior Technology and Strategy Leader in the AWS Agentic product. So, Erin, you've been with AWS or Amazon a minute.
Yes. I've been with Amazon for 25 years.
25 years.
25 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
It has been an amazing ride. Actually, the fun and exciting things about what we're doing right now is the pattern recognition of what we've had to do before and how we can bring that knowledge forward. So I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Oh, me too. So we're going to talk about Agentic, of course.
Absolutely, of course.
But,
that's all we get to talk about these days.
When I was NASA Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at JPL, it was the cloud journey.
Right.
And I'm seeing a lot of the same signs
so much
for Agentic. So a lot we can reuse.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that we really need to take to heart is, as new as this technology may feel, there are things that we've already learned that we get to use again. And, so it's, this space can be amazingly disorienting. We all show up and we're like, I don't know anything about AI.
Right.
And you're like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you do know a lot that got you where you're at and you get to use that.
Excellent. So speaking of that, what are you seeing that is the biggest challenge for customers today to implement AI? For instance, going from experimentation to production?
Right. Well, I think that fundamentally, let's use the word trust. This is a new technology. This is a technology that we are trying to bring into workflows and work that matters to us. And just like any new technology, it takes time and really active, thoughtful work to build trust in that technology and the trust of the people who are going to depend on it for things that matter. You'll hear this talked about in lots of different ways, right? Reliability, hallucinations, security, all sorts of different things. You're going to hear lots of words, but when you get down to the real root of it, it's trust. Can I trust this to do things that matter? And even more importantly, can I trust that it will not do things that I don't want it to do?
What kind of safeguards do people do for, obviously there's compliance, there's security, and then there's the trust.
Right.
How would you talk about the technology side for a second? Then we'll go to the human side.
Well, from a technology side, remember that this is technology for a purpose. This is technology to do something that matters. Can I see it doing the right or wrong thing? And if and when it does the wrong thing, can I trust that it will stop? And so from a technology perspective, what that gets into is, do I have the right observability?
Okay.
Do I have the right safeguards, the right guardrails? Do I have the right mechanisms to say, hey, I need help from a human? Those are we're going to use lots of words like policy and guardrails and isolation and all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's, can I see what it's doing? And if it's not doing what I want, well, let me know.
Yes. Now, what have you seen of customers who've done it well, especially experimenting and going to production?
So the customers that are doing this particularly well are the ones who've really internalized that is a very different process, that it's a very different type of work, and they've given it time. What we're seeing with these systems is they're actually weirdly easy to implement, but much harder to test. And so it almost inverts the timeframes of launch. So the customers that are doing well are really putting the time and effort into things like evaluation frameworks, understanding what good looks like, what bad looks like, putting kind of canaries in their systems and things like that. And then also being really thoughtful about how they roll out through sort of degrees of autonomy, right? As they validate and see correctness.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So we've started something we call the Chief AI Officer Forum.
Right.
And one of the members had started experimenting and came up with very successful agentic AI solutions. Mm-hmm. and was ready to go live.
Right.
However, it failed. Why did it fail?
Why did it fail?
Technically, it was perfect.
Right.
But it was that the people who were responsible for the work that the agentic AI did for it didn't trust it.
Oh, interesting.
Because they didn't create it.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So it's the trust factor again. You don't trust something somebody else did.
Right. It was too opaque.
Yeah.
Oh.
So how do you fix that?
Right. What did they do?
So they're going to try it again.
Okay.
And have these people who are responsible for the outcome be part of creating the agent. So when I advise customers now, that's exactly what I advise is work with the people whose job you will either, they will have fewer people working there, but have them be co-owners.
Right.
Or even owners of it.
Right. I mean, they're the ones that understand what good and bad looks like.
Exactly.
Right.
So you said something key, what good looks like. One of the big problems that we're seeing is hallucinations. And how do you trust something that is not always right, but sounds right?
Right.
So that's, it's predictive, but there is a solution. Do you want to talk about the autonomous reasoning?
Oh, the automated reasoning work. Sure.
That's really awesome.
Yes, it is really very cool stuff. And I'm going to tell you that I'm sort of a dilettante in this space. We have people who are much deeper experts than I. But basically the premise is that there are ways that we can prove kind of empirically that certain actions were taken, certain actions were not taken, and kind of basically set up a series of guardrails that they are deterministic. They are hard and solid, that sit kind of outside the agent and say, let me kind of describe what the guardrails look like. And if you violate those guardrails in a way that I can kind of show, then we're going to shut things down. And, it can be as easy as something like, hey, I have an agent shopping for my groceries and I don't want to spend more than $150. All right. Okay. Sounds good. Well, what if it goes and tries to spend 160? You got to stop it, right? It violated a guardrail. That's a really easy use case, right? So it can come up with any solution it wants. It can, but at the end of the day, like if it didn't kind of fall within the boundaries. And so there's a lot that we can do with basically provable correctness. You can do it at many layers of the system, right? You could do it down at sort of foundational inference, but you can also do it kind of just in time, sort of defense in depth, right? Just before the agent responds, for example. And if it violates its boundaries, then whatever it is that you want to have happen happens.
Yeah, what I really like about this, it creates an environment of psychological safety.
It does.
So where the people who are writing the experiments, if you will, they have a prompt, the automated reasoning says, no, it does not fit within the guardrails, sends it back and modifies it.
Right.
Till the output is 99%, within at least 99% accurate.
Right.
So all of a sudden, you can trust it.
You can trust it. And even if it doesn't get it right, you'll know it got it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And you told me before an interesting anecdote about comparing it after your many years at Amazon to the website,
right,
and how that was created. Would you share that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started at Amazon in 2000, and I was a web developer in the music store. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, e-commerce was super new. I would have people tell me, oh, you're working for Amazon. That company's going to fail.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, I think. But, a lot of skepticism over, is e-commerce going to really work, particularly in the late 90s? Am I going to get the product that I'm expecting? Will it come on time? Is it going to make it to my door? Is it the thing I ordered? Is my credit card going to get stolen? And early in e-commerce, we had this sort of twofold trust building exercise with people. One, we of course had to continue to make the technology itself more robust. Security became a thing. It was a very innocent time for the internet, and I don't think we were thinking adversarially enough early on. But that was a learning, and then thinking about sort of resilience and observability and things like that. How do people gain trust in a new system? The other things that we had to do to earn trust were things like our customer service.
Oh, yes.
Right? Amazon is well known for our high quality customer service. And I think that had we not invested in high quality customer service, that we would have never kind of hit escape velocity in the trust curve. It doesn't matter about the technology, right? It was about earning people's trust that if something did go wrong, they could get help. There was a place to go.
And I think the same thing is going to happen with agents and agentic AI. And so if we think that people will trust each other, we'll get there because we will bring them along the journey.
Yep.
How will people trust the agents? And then how will agents trust each other?
That's going to be fascinating.
So let's start with people trusting that the agent is doing the right thing.
Sure. So, observability in some ways is sort of super classic for technology, right? Like I can see the requests came in, I can see the responses come out. But in the AI space, we actually have this kind of delightful additional layer of observability. So one of the things that we get out of these models is what we call chain of thought.
Chain of thought,
COT. And the idea that I've given the large language model, the LLM, a objective question or something like that. And the way they've instrumented these models is they actually kind of share their inner dialogue. I see that the user is asking this of me. Here's what I think they're actually asking for. Here's the plan that I'm going to use to get to it. Here's the tools that I'm going to use. This is how I'm going to serve that need. And so one of the things that I think that the model providers have been really fantastic about doing is putting that telemetry into the models themselves. So that the models basically share how they're thinking. So I think that is actually an incredibly powerful tool that we haven't previously had. And so, as we build out instrumentation for these systems and things like that, surfacing out that observable telemetry, that chain of thought reasoning, things like that, the tool calls. Did you get blocked by permissions? Did you get access to this stuff? That's all pieces of that puzzle of, I gave you an objective. This is what you did. How did you get to that conclusion?
Yeah. And as long as the agent produces a log that you can then observe, even with another agent. Now, it's really interesting how we're going to move forward. So if you were advising an executive, this executive, she's going to set up a brand new company. So she has nothing. What would you recommend she structure that company to take advantage of AI and generative and agentic AI?
Sure. So I think one of the things, for a brand new company, which is such a privileged spot to be in. Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't know how to think about that. Is one, I think that I would encourage that executive to really take to heart, what is that unique value that her company truly is going to deliver? Like, what is their identity?
Good.
So that, it has nothing to do with AI. But that's their North Star. That's why they exist. That's how they're going to serve people. And then as they think about the path to delivering on that North Star, just like you would with people, what's the work that needs to get done? What information do you need? What mechanisms do you need to do? What, all of those things. And, then start thinking about okay, how do I accomplish those particular tasks, those particular things towards my North Star outcome, in a thoughtful way. What do I need to do? In reality, actually it's not that different than with people. Right. What information do you need to be successful? What does great look like? How are you measuring success? What tools do you need? What's your engagement strategy? All of the things, right? It's the same problem. We just now have new tools in our tool belt to get some of the work done.
The other thing that I've seen be successful is to experiment your way forward.
Yes.
Because you may think you know, but until you try it, you actually don't know.
Oh, yes.
So we've done some experiment with building an AI system to predict future technologies. And we released that to open source. And what we found in doing that is if we thought of agentic AI agents as interns, really smart interns. However, what we discovered the hard way is with an intern, you could say, just go figure that out.
Right.
With an agent, not so much. You have to be very, like you said earlier, very explicit and specific. But if you do, and you spend the time up front, now you haven't just trained one intern, you have trained thousands.
Right. I think the other thing is you're not going to want to lose the people who are thinking about your strategy.
Yep.
The people who are thinking about what those great outcomes look like and what good and bad looks like. This is a really tremendously powerful technology. I was building something out the other day at work, and I'm not going to claim to be doing anything super new because I work at a massive corporation. But I had this idea, and I was just able to go execute on it.
And you don't have to ask for permission.
I didn't have to ask
and
for
that's the key to those guardrails.
Right.
They give you freedom to innovate.
Yeah.
And the guardrails will protect you.
Right.
Especially if they're automated.
Right. As I'm, so I'm starting up a small, well, it's sort of a virtual team, right?
Uh-huh.
As I've been talking to them about it, I'm like, hey, we're going to be AI first. It's not going to work all the time. It's not going to always be helpful up front. We're going to learn a lot by doing it. But we're going to, one, eat our own dog food because that's part of our job. But two, we're going to use this to find what works and what doesn't. And, I think that this kind of permission to play, this permission to learn, where learning is its own objective, good or bad, I think is something that leaders really need to take to heart, right? It's not sprinkling magic AI pixie dust on stuff is suddenly going to make it better. It's, bottoms up. What's the thing that you're spending your time on that feels like it's not a good use of your time?
Right. No, I think that's fantastic. One of the issues that I hear a lot about is data and how data and AI fit together. Well, obviously, they fit together. We talk a lot to customers about that. Let me set up the challenge. The challenge is the executive says, I need to get this done.
Right.
The people who own the data says, the data is not ready.
The data's not ready.
And in reality, it'll never get ready.
No.
We're going to be at yottabyte by 2030. And it's just growing and growing and growing.
Right.
So how do we deal with that? And this is a very hard
It is a hard
question.
problem. I mean, I think that there are some non-negotiables. If you do not have good foundational data security, you need to stop and get that handled. That data, it's your customers. It's your intellectual property. It is your business. And so make sure that is handled. Now, there's lots of ways to handle it.
Yeah. And by the way, not all data needs to be protected.
Not all data needs to be protected. And depending on what you want to do with it. So one of the myths I think that we're seeing right now is that by interacting with data, it's exposed, right? That when a LLM comes in and even touches data, it's suddenly in the wild. That's not true. So that's one thing that I think people need to move beyond that particular fear. There are very straightforward ways to use an LLM with your data and keep it for yourself. But, so once you get past that kind of data security problem, the reality is what these systems are amazingly good at is dealing with data.
I agree. 90% of data is unstructured.
Right.
You don't have to structure all of it.
Right.
You don't have to have perfection.
Right.
You can just get started.
Yes.
In fact, I think agentic AI would be a wonderful thing to divide and conquer the data and set it up correctly.
Right.
But if we don't trust the data, we won't trust the outcome.
Correct.
So it comes back to trust.
Trust. You need to make sure that it's solid, that it's the data you want to use. Right? Because I think that's the other challenge. People are like, I don't know what's in my data sets.
Right.
Some of it's old.
Comes back to that observability part you talked about.
Right. Right.
So if you put your futuristic hat on, what new roles do you... People say, AI is going to steal all my jobs.
Yeah.
But we're actually seeing a lot of new jobs coming from this.
Right.
What are some of the roles you can think of?
Oh, gosh.
I'll throw in a couple.
Oh, my gosh. That's a great question. one, again, kind of this more renaissance, like almost going back to the early days of the internet where you got to wear all the hats.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
that's right.
Right?
That's a really good point.
It's so what goes around comes around.
That's living in a startup, by the way.
Exactly, living in a startup. I think we're going to see a lot of people who get to function like startup founders, and that makes me actually really excited because there's going to be some amazing things that come out. Certainly data security, like we can't ignore that.
Yeah.
Right? That is going to continue to be
and compliance.
And compliance, an increasingly critical role. And so, I think that's all one. It exists already, but I think we can't ignore it. But I also want to reflect on the fact I don't know, and I can't wait to find out.
I know
there are amazing people all over the world who I am excited to see them empowered in ways they've never been empowered before. And the emergent thinking that could potentially come out of this is what makes me super excited.
And so the thing I'm excited about is, so I've done this a few times. New role, big data came out.
Yeah.
But after a bit of playing with big data, we realized that it's really about the people.
Yeah.
So we created the role of data scientist
Right.
in NASA that existed elsewhere, and negotiated with HR what it would look like.
Right.
And then promoted people into those roles.
Yeah.
And the opportunity for executives that are listening to this is to have a group brainstorming. What are the new roles that come out? And then promote people into those roles. And if they are right, the people get excited to have a new role. They live up to their expectations. And then if they're right, they could not afford to hire them later. But now they've built engagement within the company.
Right.
So I think that's really key. And we talked about training. Training these agents, that's going to become a very specialized skill, I think.
It will. I mean, I think things like, at least for the near term, how we're going to be thinking about evaluation, think about customization, thinking about sort of setting up those guardrails. It's a new discipline.
Yeah.
And it's one that will require sort of a, much like we saw with security, sort of an adversarial level of thinking that a lot of people had to grow into. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Right? It's, we saw this with software development for a long time. It was really easy to think about what the happy path was, what should go right.
Yeah.
But our best developers were the ones who could think about what could go wrong.
Yeah.
And we have a whole new layer of thinking about that.
And it's going to be fun. And I'm really excited also, I think, that we're going to get specialized agents. So we have, technical for a second, we have Agent Core that can create thousands of agents
Right.
that customer can just do. Then we have new agents, the frontier, this new frontier. So we have Kiro, where you script-based. We have DevOps agent. We have security agent. And I think the opportunity is for these companies to create their own specialized agents.
Right.
And use that to train other agents.
Right. I think we're going to see, so kind of going back to our mythical kind of greenfield CEO, she will have her people who are her domain experts.
Yep.
But she may not have marketing domain experts, maybe not even dedicated finance people initially. And I'm excited to see sort of an emerging set of specialty agents that at least get them started. Right. At some point, you're going to want humans there.
I love it.
But how do you get started on a shoestring with a few smart people?
And I think how you get started is to just get started.
Just get
and
started.
there's never been a better time.
Never been a better time.
Well, Erin, this has been delightful. Thank you so much. And can't wait to see our mythical CEO.
I know. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fantastic.
Thanks.